So the endless complaint of devotees, you see, is that they can't do it, or they don't do it perfectly. The fact that to live the practice hurts, or that doesn't flatter you, you see, because every moment you practice, you are made even more familiar with your resistance to practice. That's true. And that is the way it is, you see, and that's part of the physics that enables practice to be fruitful. It's also it's that aspect of the physics of this practice that enables you to see the difference between God realization and states of the body-mind. This practice that moves by stages is not properly understood as progressive experience, so that when you enter into the 7th stage of life, you represent big experience, you see, a lot of experience, gross and subtle and all the rest. The significance of the stages is not that we increase in our experience or accumulate experience. The significance of the stages is that we transcend experience. And in the 7th stage, we have transcended all experience. In some secondary sense, experience has also been there, but it's been transcended in the process, and that is the key to this way of life. It is founded in hearing, seeing. It's founded in the truth, the intuition of the heart. All practice is generated on the basis of that hearing, that heartfelt response. And therefore each stage of experience is transcended by that intuition. So in this way we examine, inspect, become responsible for all of the functions of ordinary life. Likewise we become familiar with and responsible for the higher structural functions, the subtler, more mystical dimensions of awareness. But all of these phenomena are transcended in the process through intuition. And in the intuition of God, our surrender is inevitable, it is spontaneous in that moment. So if you approach me recoiled upon yourself, and you look at me or I look at you, you are made to feel yourself more profoundly. You enter into that doubt, which is self-possession. That is the very mood of self-possession, this fearful doubting. And that is part of my function, you see, to awaken you to the actual nature of your present approach. So you are constantly made to confront this limitation, this essentially self-possessed state of life and even approach to me. And continue to study the teaching, and continue to practice its disciplines, and continue to surrender. And in moments, the heart is clarified. In moments, the barriers feel as if they've been dissolved. In moments, one's experience is transformed and sometimes made more difficult, at other times made more glamorous. But ultimately, in the paradoxes of this meeting, the heart is unburdened. It is relieved of its associations with this body-mind. First, its associations with the lower, grosser realm, the lower coil, the realm of the navel, of the body, and its desiring, its sexuality, its eating and tussling with others, its acquisitions, its willfulness, its thinking. its extended nervous system, below the brows. And then at another stage we're purified of the central nervous system, the core of the body-mind, the subtler dimension, including higher aspects of the mind, which mystics commonly claim to be the domain of God, you see. But what is perceived in mystical contemplation is essentially the phenomena of the brain that are covered up or not functioning in the ordinary waking state. So we must be purified in each of the stages, in our physical life, in our emotional life, our sexual life, our mental life, our psychic life, our higher intuitive life. And soon you will pass beyond all of that. This little pearl of the higher mind will break up, and you'll go beyond the states of mind and be given some rest for a moment in which to realize that you are looking into the mindless void. You are not surrendering. Popular mysticism, you see, goes to the brain mind and is satisfied with such phenomena. Either the objects, the subtle visions and sounds and so forth, or a certain quiescence. But we must go to the heart, just as every stage of this practice must be generated from the heart on the basis of hearing, the feeling response. Just so ultimately, all of the limits of the heart itself must be penetrated. Because whatever is in the navel and whatever is in the brain, all are in the heart. They all have their seed in the heart. So until the heart itself is penetrated, we're still not surrendering, you see. At each stage of the inspection of the phenomena of experience, we are confronted with our self, our narcissism, our failure to surrender. And persist in that stage until the crisis of the penetration of that particular limit is passed. Ultimately, though, we must penetrate this heart itself. We must go to the atom. Popular mysticism is late in origin. It is associated with popular religion. The ancient teaching contained a full awareness that the navel was the lowest dimension of practice and it proceeded to the brain, but that ultimately it is the sadhana or practice of God communion at the heart that must occupy us. And the atom, the illusion of separate existence, the root of the person, the soul, must itself be overcome. After all of its experiences, its emanations, you see, have been inspected and released. Merely to resist this separate existence is not auspicious, is not God-realizing. the seventh stage, we've realized that there is no one to surrender. That what was struggled with was not something other than one's ordinariness itself, struggling with itself. All the limitations, all the difficulties of practice, in other words, are like one hand wrestling with itself. Always finding an opponent somehow. It was an illusory match. In the seventh stage, there is no one to surrender. All the failures of surrender have been understood. And the limit on the heart is broken. It no longer exists. The involuntary contraction of the light and of this body-mind ceases, has ceased, quite naturally. It does not occur. So in other words, we do not surrender, we have not surrendered truly until we have ceased to be the body-mind. Until the body-mind has ceased to have power to define consciousness, to define energy, to define love, to define life, to define existence.